what's your relationship like with failure? We talked a little bit about the idea of failure at the start of this conversation, why people don't take the leap from a miserable certain situation into an uncertain situation that might give them a better life. But what's your relationship been like with failure? Because everybody knows to be a successful entrepreneur, to build great products, you have to fail fast. But if you're struggling with, enoughness, then it seems like that might limit your ability to want to fail fast.
It is certain that the more successes you have under your belt, the easier it is to fail. Because you feel like if you've had, 9 out of 10 things have been successful and that 10th is not, doesn't mean you are a failure. So one thing is, I think separating like you being a failure versus the project or the particular thing being a failure is very, very different.
Which is hard.
Which is very hard. Toby, who is founder of Shopify and person I spend most of my time with, building this company over the last 13 or 14 years, he has this great line, which is that failure is the discovery of something that didn't work. And when you use that lens, that failure is the discovery of something that didn't work, which he taught me, that made failure totally different. So now it's no longer about failing. It's like, what did I actually get from that that's going to make it better the next time? And Shopify puts out a lot of products. We had something called Shopify Editions, which happened in February, where twice a year, we basically do almost like the fashion industry. We do like our spring collection and our winter collection. So we do these things called editions where we put out all of the products and features that we built over the last 6 months. We do about 100 of them each time, which is a lot. Not every one of them is going to be a huge success, but some of those will be a complete game changer for our business, but also in the lives of the people that use our product. And I think we have a courage about that. I'm trying to have more of a courage about that myself. If I take on new responsibilities or new roles, am I going to be a failure? And the best example I can give you is, for about 5 years or so, I was Shopify's chief operating officer. And I don't think I was ever the most operationally minded person, meaning I didn't necessarily live in the details. I didn't necessarily live in spreadsheets. But when Toby and the board asked me to be the chief operating officer, it was a huge honor. I mean, Shopify is such a great company. Wow, like that's what they're asking me. And I worked really, really hard to be the best version of a chief operating officer. And it was only 3 years ago or so that at some point it was obvious to me that like, that's not really my skill set. But I didn't want to say anything about that because I really believe that like I can figure it out. And I think I did a good job, but maybe not the best job ever. And once I began to talk about, hey, this is probably not the right role for me where I can be the best in the world at, there is this other role, which traditionally is called the president role, which is very external facing. Maybe I can be the best in the world at that thing. I'm not there yet, but I can, like, that is a journey I can get on. And maybe I don't have to be well-rounded. Maybe I can actually be spiky. And instead of actually trying to be a well-rounded leader, maybe I can focus on sharpening that point and sharpening that point over and over again. And that's when, I had a conversation with Toby and the team and said, look, there is this other role and we need to bring someone in whose life's work it would be to be a great chief operating officer. I mean, we have that now. But man, Steve, I did not want to admit that I was not the right COO for Shopify because
ego, right?
Total. And ego and insecurity. One, I'm admitting failure. The other one is I like this role. It's a very important role. But it was only when I sort of began to be honest about, is this the right role for me, that I began to say, hey, there's this other thing. And I can tell you, I am not a little bit happier now in my current role and more like, it is so much more meaningful for me to have this role today because I feel like this is really where Shopify will benefit the most from what is my superpower, which is really storytelling. And the company's better. I like it better. The current COO is so much better at than I was ever. Everything kind of came about, but it probably took too long.
I think that story is an incredibly powerful one because I come across people all the time within my own companies, but also just people that will send me messages who are currently in a role. Maybe they're being offered a promotion into another role. And because it's a bigger role with a bigger salary, they are inclined to take it. But there's that missing pause of sort of self-awareness where you've got your ego pulling you because I'm going to have, higher status in this company. I'm going to get more pay. People are going to think I'm cooler and more impressive. But then the most important long-term question is, of course, like, am I good at this? And would I really love my life more? You see that a lot, don't you? When someone gets promoted to a management position and suddenly the group of friends they have are now the people that they have to manage. That point of self-awareness is so incredible. I reflect on a guy called Pete, who I offered a promotion to one day. And he was like, no, I'm not ready. And This must have been
You're like,
six
what?
I'm like, what? I'm offering you more money, the chance to become a director in the business. And he'd been with the business for 4 years at that point. He stayed for 2 years after I even left. He was just like, I'm not quite ready yet. He goes, I've still got a lot left to learn, a lot of skills. And I really like my current job.
Yeah. I like Pete.
Pete is the happiest guy I know. He has his shit together way more than I do.
And not only is he happy, but he's great. He's got great self-awareness. One change that we recently made at Shopify was we realized that a lot of people, as they were going through the IC track or individual contributor track, eventually just leads to a manager track. And so the upward mobility of your career ended up being, you actually, at some point, if you're really good, stop doing the thing you're really good at. And so very recently, we put out sort of a new operating model for our team, for our organization. And I think it got leaked to the press. So this is all public information. But if you want to be an incredible senior independent contributor, senior IC, we will pay you the same rate that we would pay a senior manager. And that if you actually like your craft, whether you're a developer or a marketer or a salesperson, or you're doing data analysis, you're a data scientist, if you love your craft, and I know some people who love their craft, they've been doing it for 30 years, you do not necessarily need to leave that craft to be a manager to get some sort of additional seniority or additional compensation. And dispelling some of that, frankly, like the bullshit around the only way to be successful is to be a manager, is to lead people. Not everyone needs to lead people. Some people should be a coach. Other people should just continue becoming like the greatest player on the field ever. And making that okay, I think, is going to make Shopify a much better company. But one thing you did talk about that you sort of raised that got me thinking about, like, the self-identity thing, is that I think a lot of times for this guy, Pete may really just be ambitious about perfecting his craft and his skill set. And he doesn't necessarily believe he's ready yet to leave that because there's still work to be done. I love that. And I think in most companies, what you end up with is the Petes of the world, when they say they don't want a promotion, they often get taken out completely. Well, Pete's not ambitious. Pete's not going to be someone who's going to be, a real contributor longer term here. Maybe he's lazy. Pete's not lazy. He has a deep understanding. I don't know who Pete is. It's going to be hilarious.
You're
when he
nailing
hears
it
this.
though. Yeah.
Maybe I do know Pete, but Pete is obviously a clear understanding of, hey, there's this thing, there's this spiky object. Don't make me a river stone. I don't want to be well-rounded. I want to be so good at this. And by the way, if I do this, the company's going to get better. I'm going to be happier. Our customers are going to be happier. It all kind of works out. I think most companies turn their employees ultimately into river stones. They say you got to be better here and better there. And I think instead, this sort of T-shaped, you've heard this sort of T-shaped model of skill set. I think the T-shaped is much better, where you can go broad on a lot of different things, but you go deep on one. And that one thing for me is the storytelling aspect of my job, is making sure investors, the public, our merchants, media, everyone in the world knows what Shopify is up to and understands what our ambitions are. And so I'm trying to get really deep on the storytelling, but I also need to understand our APIs. I need to understand our infrastructure. I need to understand, how we build product and how we get shit done at Shopify. So I understand all those things because I need to speak to it intelligently and with conviction and with a deep understanding. But I'm never going to write code, because there are people that should write code that are going to be so much better than I'll ever be.
If you love the Diary of a CEO brand and you watch this channel, please do me a huge favor. Become part of the 15% of the viewers on this channel that have hit the subscribe button. It helps us tremendously, and the bigger the channel gets, the bigger the guests.